Great morning, great morning, great morning. 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Time for the It's About You radio show here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community. I'm your host, Maurice McDonald. And each and every week, I'm here. I have the honor, the privilege, the opportunity to be a part of this, have this platform. I don't take it lightly. I don't take it for granted. It is truly a blessing. And because it's Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, that means someone's at work, someone's in the office already, someone's working out, they're having breakfast, or whatever they're doing. Thank you for the ride. Thank you for the extra cup of coffee, the time they have here. And as usual, on the 8 o'clock, I always start with the morning quote of the day. The morning quote of the day basically says, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. There are some things you think about that you should not be believing. Because sometimes it's the enemy coming towards you. It's some negative somebody's put in your head. You start to think that, hey, I'm not worthy. I can't make it. I can't do this. Whatever you may think, don't believe everything you think. Because some things you think are destructive. Some things you think can be very damaging to your psyche, damaging to your ego, damaging to your mindset. So you got to pour good things into your mind. So that is the morning quote of the day, brought to you by MauriceMcDonald.net. Go to MauriceMcDonald.net and learn all about your amazing gut microbiome. Ladies and gentlemen, today I've got amazing guests here today, but I want to talk a little bit about the topic. You know, we're getting near the holidays. One is already passed. Christmas. Everybody's getting the festive moods and all those types of things. And holidays are not always gentle or kind to some people, because the topic that nobody wants to talk about is the grief around the holidays. There are a lot of people who are struggling with grief around the holidays, depression and all other kinds of things. And definition of that word grief, it's an emotional, physical, and psychological response to a significant loss. While it is most commonly associated with death of a loved one, grief also can come in many forms: loss of relationships, the health, identity, employment, stability, a major life change. It affects people in different ways, and you can show up in sadness, anger, guilt, numbness, confusion, fatigue, sleep change. There is no right way to a timeline to grief. It hurts so many different people. And so with that said, I decided that this week my guest is someone that I've known for several years. She has great credentials. She's an educator. But first and foremost, she's a licensed clinical social worker, and she's the founder of TFC, which is the Counseling Solutions and Therapy for Church. She blends practical clinical tools with faith-based wisdom to help individuals and leaders strengthen their mental and emotional well-being. Miss Byrd, her name is Narkeya Byrd. Miss Byrd also works with veterans, families, and faith communities, and is passionate about bringing mental wellness and emotional healing every day to support people in all walks of life. She also speaks and teaches on burnout, boundaries, emotional wounds, and connectedness to spiritual and mental health. So today on the It's About You radio show, I'm honored to have Miss Narkeya Byrd. How you doing, Miss Byrd?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you and I were talking a little bit, and I'm so glad. I've been wanting to have you on the show for the longest, because I know you've been so busy. You teach at the college as well, the social work program here, and also having your own practice and having children of your own. I know you're very busy, but I'm glad that we're here talking about this topic of grief in the holidays. If you would, talk to my audience a little bit about the impact of grief around the holidays.
Well, you started off, I love the way that you started off the conversation and kind of talking about what grief actually is. The thing about the holidays is that sometimes people start to experience those feelings of grief from some sort of loss. And like you said, a lot of times it is the loss of a loved one. But oftentimes there are other things. There are just other life transitions that take place. The change in seasons overall sometimes brings people those feelings of grief. But when you think about the holidays, everybody associates that with family time. Regardless of what your beliefs are, most people spend the holidays with family, or it at least causes people to reflect on family, love, togetherness. And so when people reflect on that during this holiday season and they don't have some of their loved ones, they've lost parents, some people have lost children and other family members, it makes it a much more difficult time for them to navigate.
Absolutely. And this is the time when you see all the commercials, the gift giving,
Mm-hmm.
all of the smiles on TV, because you got corporate America targeting billions of dollars, and they got these, and they've been working on these ads for 6 months, getting ready for the Christmas season, because this is the time they call it, Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all those kinds of things, and yet I could secretly be hurting inside,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with some stuff, and for me, why this brings up so many memories for me, because as you well know, my background was law enforcement, and so I remember the Thanksgiving morning of 2010, and I'm retiring in 6 months, and I'm just thinking about, well, 6 more months of this career and I'm over, and I get that one call. I'd gone through a training called suicide by cop about 4 months prior to this, a mandatory training, and on that morning I was facing it. This gentleman, who was a retired military officer, been married for 40 years, and his wife passed away, and they buried her 4 days before Thanksgiving. And obviously, Thanksgiving morning, he's been drinking, he has a weapon, he's
Mm-hmm.
grieving, and which is all, as you well know, bad combinations, and he has a gun. And so he calls his daughters and say, life isn't worth living anymore. I'm going to go be with your mama. And so they dial 911. They obviously call the police, and I show up at the door, and he's got the weapon in his hand. So this idea of grief and holidays got real personal for me after
Mm-hmm.
experiencing that, because that was traumatic for me to face. But
Yeah.
realizing I never forget. So every Thanksgiving that comes or holidays, I think about that gentleman. He survived
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. He came out and pointed his weapon at the police. The SWAT officer, fired a weapon, and hit him in his hip, because he has the scope. He has the ability to do that. He didn't want to take that man's life because he knew that man wanted to die. But he was grieving on a holiday. And so
Mm-hmm.
this brings a lot of thought for me. But is it normal for people to feel some type of guilt or anger during holidays while grieving?
It happens often. I will say that. Is it normal? I think that is one thing that has become normalized because it is a frequent occurrence that people start to experience grief, because that's where some of the memories come from. And you got to think about, just anything when there's a change of seasons, and some of the things that you see, you hear, you feel, you smell. It brings back memories. And so when you are walking around and you see Christmas lights, or you smell hot chocolate or cookies, some of these things just draw the senses, and they bring people to the reality of certain things that they've experienced in the past, or things that they can no longer experience. And so that is the hard part, saying I will never be able to experience this moment with this person, and they experience grief from that, and that is harder. It may be harder than a different day, because those holiday memories are most often attached to something significant. A song that was sung, a family tradition, something significant that you no longer can have with that person. So yes, to say it is normal, or has become a normal impact of grief, that people experience it around holidays.
Absolutely. And I want to go ahead, and I mentioned this earlier, but when I was given the definition of grief, but I want to put this out here right now, because what are your thoughts about people who, let's say, lost their mother Like for example, I lost my mom transition in 2015, and or whatever the year somebody may have gone through this, and another family member or somebody may say, "Oh, you should be over that by now." What are some of your thoughts about a statement like that?
Well, I think when people make statements like that, they don't understand that grief is different for different people, and how people navigate grief is different for different people. So for them, they may have been over that by now, but for you, it may be different, and they don't know that experience because it's a very personal thing. So that it is often an insensitive thing to say, like, "Oh, you should be over that by now." Now, grief is a process, and there are stages in that process. And there does come a time when that process, if you're looking at the stages of grief, when that process is completed in terms of acceptance. Does that mean that you won't feel any type of emotion after that? No, it doesn't. So with grief, the emotions can come, 2 days later, 10 days later, 10 months later, 10 years later. It doesn't matter. There is no restriction in time in that. But in the sense of some of the responses that people might have, some things you do look to see has that resolved in terms of dealing with grief. And if certain things have not, there might be other things that people need to work through, maybe throughout therapy, to be able to navigate that process, because there are certain things that keep people stuck in that process of grief.
Right, right. You mentioned the stages of grief. What are some of those stages of grief?
Well, grief usually, it depends on the source that you use, but we typically look at it in 5 stages. Sometimes certain sources add a couple more, so you'll either see 5 or you'll see 7. But just to talk about the 5 overarching stages, the first one is denial. That's kind of that protective response. And it sounds like, this can't be happening. I can't believe that. So that's usually that first stage. And then there's anger. Pain oftentimes shows up as anger. So when people are in pain, they often display an expression of anger, or people are hurt, they often express anger. So that is usually that second stage. And then there's the bargaining stage, is what it's typically called. And it's like the what if I had only. And sometimes this part, and is associated with guilt or shame. So I do talk about that oftentimes, because if people are stuck in the process of grief, is usually related to guilt or shame. If I had gotten them to the hospital fast enough, if I had been there, that's that third stage of bargaining. What if, only if I had one more day or opportunity with them. Sometimes people, will have those prayers. Lord, if you could just, bring them back to me, those things like that. The fourth is usually depression. So that loss really settles in. Sometimes you see that people, you may ask them, well, how did you make it through that funeral? You seem to be okay. But usually that depression sets in a little while later. So it could be a few days after, or it could be a few weeks after. Sometimes after it settles in after the funeral, because people are oftentimes making arrangements for a funeral, and they're very busy and they have to be focused on certain items. After all of the dust settles, there's usually that fourth stage of depression. And then as you navigate through that, you get to the end of acceptance. And it's not about being okay. It's just about acknowledging essentially the reality and learning how to live and process through that and move forward.
Yes, yes. So it is. Sounds like you're saying is this depends on the stage they're in and the individuals and where they are.
Yes.
In that process.
And that's not. Yes, and that's not okay. I'm on stage 1 this week and stage 2 this week. Stage 3 could take 2 years.
Right.
Stage 4 could extend. So there's not a time frame in terms of this is when you should start this process and this is when you should end this process. And if it goes beyond that, then, you should be over it by now. It doesn't work like that, because the way that people are made up your personality, your background, your level of connection to people, places, things will oftentimes count when it comes to how you navigate that grief.
Right. That is so true. And I realized that, there may be days in a grief process, the person could be laughing one day or one moment of remember time when mama did this or my brother did that, or that they have those days of yes, I remember and I'm doing well today. And the next day they might be in bed.
Right.
Or
exactly.
those moments, and you got to learn to be okay with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That is
and
okay.
Yes. And even those stages, when you think about the stages, it's not a checklist. People oftentimes move in and out of these stages, sometimes revisit them. Some stages people skip. Not everybody deals with that anger part. Not everybody deals with the depression, especially if a person was suffering. Some people get to acceptance a lot quicker because they didn't want to see that person suffer. Mm-hmm. So it's not a checklist to say, okay, I got that. It varies per person, but this is typically a framework of what we see as we see people navigate grief.
Yes, that is so powerful. And I know there are some people who avoid holiday gatherings because they are struggling, and there may be that insensitive family member there or something that triggers them. What are your thoughts about people having to show up, or should they take care of themselves and not attend those kinds of events?
Well, I for sure say that people don't have to do anything. Right. So they don't have to feel obligated to show up in a space where they feel like they don't belong, where they feel like they're not appreciated, or they're not, or people around them are not sensitive to their needs. So they do not have to show up in that space. This is one thing that I will add to that as a caveat. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with family members or with Christmas parties or holiday gatherings, but I do always recommend community versus isolation. So sometimes when somebody doesn't show up to these events, they're not showing up to anything. And that is more so with withdrawal, and that is more so isolation. And that is not always the healthy way of doing that. But you do, when you are in an environment around people, you want to be with the right people. You don't want to be around people that are dismissive. You want to be around people where you could show emotion and people will have an understanding of that. So I think it's okay to avoid holiday parties or events or things like that may be triggering, but I don't think that it's okay to avoid community altogether. I think that isolation just pushes you more into despair a lot of times, where you do want to be able to express those feelings, feel those feelings, but also work your way through them so that you can experience some joy throughout the holidays. And that's one thing that people struggle with, is never being able to regain that sense of joy or love for certain things that they did before because of that grief. And that means that you're stuck in that process, because you should be able to feel joy and appreciation around whatever without feeling guilty or without feeling like, okay, I just don't want to be bothered ever again.
Right. That is so true. I'm so glad you said that. The word that was resonating in my ears as you were speaking was the person needs to find their tribe.
Yes.
Where they rejoice. It could be with it could be with friends. It doesn't have to be with families. It depends.
That's right.
And we're not trashing families, but we just face it. Family is a unique, set of people. Let's put it this way. We all have people that are different emotions. People handle trauma differently. They handle grief differently. You got those that medicate, but since the holidays are here and we're not avoiding them, getting themselves prepared for it, and so that they can get through the process, because as I heard you say, it is a process. It's ongoing, and we're at different stages of it. So when you have worked with people in your practice, especially in the faith-based setting. Have you ever come across times and around the holidays or whatever that you've had to work with clients?
Yes. Mm-hmm. You mean clients that are grieving?
Yes.
Yes. And I often work with clients that are grieving, and it does come up a lot of times throughout the holidays. I would see this specifically, or I do see this specifically with my veteran clients, even if they haven't lost anyone. I was talking to an individual this week, and he was just sharing, the holidays are always hard for him because he thinks of the troops that are out and they can't be home with their families. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have a significant loss himself, but he feels that grief because he knows how it was when he had to be away from his family for the holidays and what that felt like. So he kind of carries that. It gives him an opportunity to reflect. And so sometimes he starts to grieve their loss, not his own. And that can happen at times too.
Right. And I think that is a major point you just brought up about the veterans, because oftentimes mm-hmm. they're away from home during the holidays, and mm-hmm. and many of them are serving and they go through the trauma of closeness to Army buddies and comrades and losing them, or the troops who are away from their families, and then when they come home, sometimes they can't adjust, perhaps, mm-hmm. to dealing with that and, mm-hmm. and feeling guilty. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. But if you think about it, what do you think of someone should do if they're feeling pressured to be cheerful when they're not really ready? Because sometimes people around there, come on, let's give a cheer for this, or let's stop being sad. We should be, cheerful. And somebody who's maybe not feeling it at that particular moment.
Okay. When you ask that, the one term comes to mind, and I'm going to use this very loosely because I don't always like how the term is used, mm-hmm. but in that example, it would be appropriate. This is what you would consider toxic positivity, in a sense where somebody is forcing you to be positive when you don't feel that way. And sometimes it's used to me in a different tone, meaning that people are forcing themselves in a way to be positive. And I think that when you start to shift your perspective about something, that is a good thing. Those are behavioral tools that we learn and that we teach. So that's not a bad thing. But if someone is forcing you and saying, hey, let's do a toast, hey, and you know that you're dealing with some other feelings that you cannot express, then that would be that term, toxic positivity. And that's really hard. And, so I would say to avoid those environments for sure. And then the other part of that is just being honest. I'm really not in the mind frame to be able to celebrate in that way, But also one thing that is helpful for the people around you is to really be able to convey, if possible, what you do need. So if you need time, if you need space, if you need to vent, be able to convey that as well. Because that is one of the issues that I see a lot of time with people, and most people are avoidant. I think most people either push that, okay, let's just have a good time, or just kind of some cliche phrases. But I think for the most part, people are avoidant, so they don't address others' grief at all because they don't know what to say. They know that there's nothing that they can necessarily say that's going to make things right, so they're like, well, if they don't bring it up, I'm not going to bring it up. Because they don't know what to do. And that's how the case is. Most times people with grief feel like others are being insensitive, and they're not always being insensitive. They don't know what to do or know what to say to make that moment better. So sometimes it is helpful to be honest. You don't have to force yourself into a positive mood, but then also, what is it that you need in that moment? Because that allows you the opportunity to reflect on what would be helpful. We know that your loved one, you can't bring your loved one back, but there might be something that helps you to process those emotions easier and to feel supported.
Yes, that is so true. And oftentimes this topic is something that people don't want to talk about in the first place sometimes. And people try to medicate through substances to, to cope with it. Maybe I have some drinks. And I think about people who are in recovery sometimes who, because of this, they relapse because grief can be a trigger, for them. And I need to cope with it. So if you add it all up from the military folks, from the people who have lost someone, people who lost their jobs or whatever else, that grief can be affect people many, many ways. And then you, on top of it, you add the holidays when I'm supposed to be, when society tells me it's Jingle Bells, Santa Claus, it's the, it is the, birth of baby Jesus. It is the Quran. It is everything, I'm supposed to be based upon what I see, all these commercials and everything else. And hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Your body is the most advanced operating system in the world. Every day, trillions of cells run millions of processes at once. Over time, it can start to slow down due to stress, poor sleep, diet, environmental stressors. It can feel overwhelming. Suddenly, you feel the lag. Brain fog, low energy, poor digestion, slower recovery. That's your system struggling to keep up. What if, instead, you could give yourself an edge to tackle what the day has in store? From the creators of the world's most powerful activation products comes Healthy Edge. Healthy Edge starts with Protandim NRF2 Synergizer. It reduces oxidative stress by up to 40% in 30 days by activating your natural cellular defense system to help your body make its own antioxidants that are 1,000,000 times more powerful than any you could ever take. The other half of Healthy Edge is P84. Using the right amount of whole food ingredients, probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, and digestive enzymes, P84 activates the master peptides in your gut that help regulate, repair, and restore balance, going beyond supplementation. On their own, each activator is powerful. Together, they help you feel unstoppable. NRF2 Synergizer is your defense. P84 is your offense. And when they work as one, you don't just keep up, you stay ahead of everything life throws your way. Want to level up your activation? Check out our other activator products and learn about sharing these life-changing products to start a healthy side business. Take back your day with Healthy Edge.
To learn more about Healthy Edge, simply go to MauriceMcDonald.net. That's MauriceMcDonald.net. Again, MauriceMcDonald.net to learn about the Healthy Edge and take back your day. We're back, guys, here on the It's About You radio show, WDRB Media, the voice of the community. We're here with my guest, Miss Byrd, and who's a licensed therapist. She has her own practice as well, and she's an educator in social work. She's been in this field many, many years, and we're talking about that. If you missed the first session, we're talking about grief at the holidays in particular, and no doubt about it. There are a lot of people going through things. I left off talking about how some people medicate their problems or whatever, or people who are in recovery. They're doing well, and the holidays came, and I lost my job. Mom's not here anymore. I'm just gonna take one drink, and the rest is history. And because everybody else is drinking, and I know I shouldn't do it, but it's grief takes over. So, Miss Byrd, I want to talk about support. How can family members support each other when someone may be grieving in a different way or in different ways?
Well, I would say a few things. One, I would say just give people space. Give people space and time. Give your family members space to grieve, especially if they grieve differently from you, especially if their grief lasts longer than it may for you, because everybody has its own sort of process and everybody's grief has its own rhythm. Some people cry openly, some people go quiet for a little bit, some people try to stay busy. It just depends. So give people space, but also be supportive in communication. Reach out, be honest. be gentle with the communication. How are you feeling? You know, what do you need right now? I mentioned that question before, really asking what someone needs, because you don't know. You know, you don't know how to approach, and you want to be sensitive. Is there anything I can take off your plate? You know, share responsibilities with people. If you know, grief can sometimes drain people. So if you can do certain things like cooking or cleaning, helping with transportation, if the person has kids, helping with the kids, things like that really helps to be supportive and be sensitive throughout that time. And then also, you know, just it's okay to talk about the person. And sometimes people avoid those conversations because they don't know what it's going to bring up for the person. But a lot of times people feel like they will forget, others will forget them. And I have a client like that where she lost her son. And, you know, it's been a few years, but she acknowledges that she brings her son up in conversations. And that's one thing that I noticed, that she didn't want people to forget him. You know, she wants to keep his memory alive. So it's okay to have a conversation about that person, and not feel like you are avoiding those conversations. It's okay, you know, to bring them up, you know, and just look out. Overall, just look out for each other's well-being.
Yes,
you know,
that is
grief
so true.
can cause. Yes, because it can cause isolation, like I talked about earlier. It can cause sleep issues. I mean, during that depressive stage, there are all the symptoms, or most of the symptoms of depression. So poor appetite, poor sleep, no motivation or low motivation, difficulty concentrating, you know, not wanting to do certain things that you love. So somebody might love fishing any other time, but now they don't want to do it anymore. So you start to see those things. So you do want to just look out for each other's well-being, make sure that people are eating, make sure they're sleeping, make sure they're taking care of themselves, because that is important as well.
Yes, that is so true. Taking care of themselves, because, you know, usually if it's family or grief, or even the idea of losing a job at the holidays, that can cause some stress, and the idea of, I got all these bills to pay, it's Christmas, I can't be the dad, I'm supposed to be the breadwinner, I'm supposed to be providing all of this, and now I got my job, you know, and all of that, and dealing with the loss of someone. It can just be just layers upon layers of lifing, I could call it, you know.
Yes.
Coming at me, you know, all over, and I need desperately to talk to someone. How would you encourage someone who might be listening, going through it, hear us talking, and we're ringing their bell, so to speak? They're going through exactly what we're talking about right now. You know, I always advocate here on my show, but people know that, I'm sure they know what I'm going to say, is reach out to a counselor. Reach out to someone, if or a pastor, so someone, you know, that you can talk to, who's going to be non-judgmental, somebody who's going to, you know, not criticize you, not tell you what to do, but maybe be in the moment with them. What other thoughts do you have of somebody who might be going through just what we're saying right now?
Well, I'm going to give it from two perspectives. If it's a family member and they're approaching somebody with grief, don't force people to be strong. If you are the individual that's struggling with grief, don't force yourself to be strong. I think that is one of the biggest things, is trying to force yourself to be strong, or to be able to, you know, feel like you don't need anything, or that you don't have needs. Being honest is really important. Like you said, seeking counseling. If you want somebody objective to talk to, counseling is good. Hotlines are good. Even though there is a hotline called the suicide hotline, you don't have to be struggling with suicide in order to call that hotline, just to have somebody to talk to. If you have prayer lines available, those are helpful, just to have somebody to uplift and to encourage you and to pray with you. Those things that help you when you're going through other things that are difficult, lean on those same processes. And so if you are a person that prays, that worships, that gets around community, that listens to sermons or encouraging messages. Those things are helpful too, and they get you into a place that will help you navigate what you're going through in your mind.
Yes. So I'm glad you mentioned about that of faith, because a lot of times, that part is so important to have somebody there. But oftentimes, be careful of those individuals in church who may say things like you, child, I know how you feel. I know just how you feel. You're going through. They mean well, but it's been my experience. You don't know how they feel. And saying that, or I know how you feel, but your parents are still alive, and they know that. So that can be one of those, you may get a reaction you don't like, from that. So what are your thoughts about it? Because I know the church members mean well, but what are your thoughts about some of those kinds of statements?
And people do mean well. People do mean well, but they can be triggering. Statements like that can be very triggering for people. And I think that's why some people avoid conversation, because it's like people don't always know the right thing to say. And anything can trigger anybody depending on who you're talking to. And so, so I get that. And so you do want to be careful when it comes to that, because people do say things like that. Oh, I understand. I know how you feel, when they haven't had the same level or experience of loss. But I think that nobody fully knows how an individual feels, even if two people have lost their mother. My mother and your mother, and my mother's relationship and you and your mother's relationship are still two different relationships. It's still two different losses. So nobody fully knows how that other person feels. So nobody can fully and honestly say that, and nobody can also have that expectation of another person. So when it comes to things like that, yes, people will sometimes say things that are triggering. Yes, people do oftentimes, mean well. People oftentimes have struggled with grief, so they compare, or when they say, I know how you feel, is because they have had some type of loss, even if it's not the same loss. But just because two people have lost their mother, two people have lost their sister, doesn't mean that they know how you feel either, Yes. And so you just have to be careful with things like that.
Yes. And also this thing about the traditions of the holiday shopping, those kind of things that maybe you went shopping with your loved one all the time, and you go by to certain stores, and this idea I don't feel like going to the store anymore. I don't want to shop. Then from what I'm hearing you saying, it sounds like they need to do what's going to make them feel comfortable, or make them feel good. Is that correct?
They need to do in a way, but if a person was my client, I would encourage them to even do those things that they don't feel comfortable doing. So I would say that. So I'm not going to say that they should, whatever you feel like today. I do feel like people have to confront their feelings and emotions. And sometimes that comes with challenging yourself outside of what you would normally do. So yes, if I was working with someone with grief, I'm going to oftentimes encourage them to do some of those things or other things in place of that, but not just say, okay, I don't feel like going out, I'm going to stay home, and my question would be, well, what are you doing at home? Or I'm just going to, because you also don't want people to wallow in that feeling. Right. That does not help resolve it. And so oftentimes people feel like, well, if I just get by myself, I'll just be all right. But that usually doesn't help resolve that feeling. It helps. It causes it to progress. And so if it's a couple of hours you want to be by yourself or things like that, but you're going into multiple days, multiple weeks of isolation, then I am going to encourage some of those things. May not be the same activities, but I am going to challenge people to do things.
That is so true, because I know I have a student at college who lost a child, and she would always 3, 4, 5 days before Christmas, she would put the Christmas tree up with her son. And he loved the Christmas tree. So in the bedroom, which was his bedroom, she would go in there and put a Christmas tree and decorate the Christmas tree just like they used to do. He always wanted a tree in his room, a small tree. So she got a big tree and put it in the room. And she said that was one of the things that she felt connected to him in those moments. To putting the tree up.
Yes. Yeah, and that's really important. I have a client where she struggled with the loss of her mom, and they always made cinnamon rolls and bacon on Thanksgiving morning. And she made, cinnamon rolls and bacon for her kids. And those things really help people to get through the process. But it's a part of confronting that. You don't know how you're going to feel until you actually do something. And so sometimes people anticipate a feeling that's often worse than what the actual feeling is. Oh, on Christmas, I'm going to be down and out, Christmas, I hate Christmas. And so you're already creating that level of anticipation and that level of anxiety when oftentimes when that day comes, it's not the same. So you do want to, yes, there are ways that you can prepare yourself, but in the same light, you do want to be able to pull the pieces that will help to allow you to experience joy so that you're not in a cycle, because that is a cycle, essentially, when every year at a certain time of year, then you have these certain feelings or you have these anxieties. You want to sort of throw yourself out of that cycle at some point.
Yes, that is so true. And the thing of it is, like you said, the cycle's going to come. As long as you live, you got to go through this again at some point in time. So finding that way so that, like you said, the person is not wallowing, in that. And I know we've been talking about grief, but I also think about the idea at Christmas time, the expectation or the feelings of depression that comes in there when people don't have the money to buy the gifts that they used to buy. I used to have money to buy everybody a present, and now I don't have that. Or the situation, here it is at Christmas time, I got to make cutbacks and I feel stressed because of my job situation. I can't afford it, but I want to do it anyway and get in debt. So I just, what are your thoughts on those lines?
Well, all of the holidays, I will say, because they are all commercialized, every last one of them,
yes, including
Christmas. So all of the holidays are really about perspective. What are the things that you value and what are the things that you find important? And you have to be able to give yourself some perspective and focus and highlight the things that you do have. And what happens with grief, with depression, with stress, is that people oftentimes spend that time focusing on what they do not have and what they cannot do. And there's very limited awareness or focus on what you do have and what you can do. So when you are able to shift that perspective, you're not trying to meet past expectations, Some people don't even value certain things the same anymore. Gosh, I used to go out and spend all this money and give, that's not important. We can create other traditions instead. So I do always encourage people, focus on what you can do. If you can't buy all the gifts, then what are you able to do? What can you contribute? Can you bring something? Can you sing a song? Can you create? You don't have to, and even if you can buy all the gifts, is that the value? Are those the values that you want to highlight? Are those the expectations that you want to set for people? That every time you come around, they're going to be getting stuff. You have the option to change that and adjust that at any time, so that doesn't become a point of contention or become a point of stress. Yeah, I may have been able to do that before, but can't do it now. And some people, they can do it and they just decide, what, why was I doing it? I'm just not going to, but make peace with whatever that is. If your financial position is not the same, make peace with that and highlight the things that you do have. If you have a full family that you can sit around, if everybody is healthy, these things, you have to shift your perspective to highlight, like, gosh, things could be so much worse for me outside of not having gifts. for one day. Because when you wake up on Christmas, you open up all these presents and you eat and you go through the day, the next day, it's a regular day. And so you have done all this throughout the last month or so to create this feeling or these emotions, and then the next day is over, And so why did you invest that time? And put that pressure. And a lot of times it's internal. It's not external pressure. It's internal. I feel like I got to be doing this. And some, versus that external pressure. When it's kids, then you do sometimes feel that external pressure because they want certain things. I mean, but have they worked for certain things? Do they always deserve some of these things that we give them? So I do think it's a part of shifting your perspective as you manage the holidays, so that you're not overwhelmed or stressed about the busyness of it, about the finances of it, because that takes away from the joy from the experience as well.
Yes, and that's all of this. I'm hearing this word pressure. Internal pressure. I'm applying it myself. I'm making it because that mindset. When you said that, I feel like I have to do this. No, you don't have to do anything. Those are and not only that, the idea is sometimes the gift you give may be something you make for someone. If you're good at baking, you're baking them a cake. Hello, or the idea of arts and crafts, or whatever people do, or an act of service for someone, to help go out and help people. You think about the holidays, there are people who go help the homeless, or they'll go do some other things that's really difficult. Because I know there's a lady that I know who lost her son through he was a victim of a murder years ago, and she has started a nonprofit and been very active in gun crimes and things, to help other people. And she's connected with a whole new group of women and men who, or should I say parents, who are all experiencing the same thing. And they now, and they're doing things to support each other. I see that they get together around the holidays and, and they fellowship and do things and they honor and remember their loved ones. I see the T-shirts and things they have, and they're not, and the people in the pictures on Facebook, they're not frowning. It's like they found a new family, so to speak. So So what are your thoughts about people who do those things?
Yeah, I think that's important. And I want to say this too. If the only contributions that you have are financial, you need to be able to reconsider what you have to offer. Because there is so much more to offer than financial contributions or buying gifts when there are so many needs out there. So when you have, when you lend a helping hand, when you use some of the gifts that you have, even if it's a gift of encouragement, and you call people or you text them throughout this time, that's still a contribution that carries a lot more weight, and it carries the weight a lot farther than some of the financial contributions. So yes, when you use that opportunity to become an activist or to serve others, then you gain from that and others gain from that, and it's a more lasting impact.
Absolutely. That is so true. Listen, before we go, how can my listeners, if need be, reach out to you or follow you?
So I am on all social media platforms. On Facebook, my business page is Therapy for Church. I also have a page on Instagram that's Narkeya White, WHITE, or Therapy for Church. I also have that page on Instagram, on TikTok as well, Narkeya White, and then on YouTube as Therapy for Church. So you will find me on all the platforms, either with my name or with my business name.
Therapy for Church. And that is so powerful. And I love that idea, too, because I know we'll have to get you to come back another time. I know you've been very busy doing what you do, but I just love the fact that you came today, because this topic has been brewing at me, because I know each of the holidays, like you said, is so commercialized, but I know it. I mean, you're getting after. I mean, people don't even think about Thanksgiving anymore, but Christmas is the big one, And people
Mm-hmm.
are going through some things at this time. As we speak, people who are losing their loved ones they've caretaken for years, and my first year without them, or my fifth one without them, and those moments of crying is okay. Those
Mm-hmm.
moments of whatever you do, it's okay. But also remembering the good times, because you won't cry every
Mm-hmm.
day. There'll be some days, there'll be some laughter, because there'll be some good memories. And so I'm glad you came here and shared this information with me today. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Have you ever made the statement that you had a gut feeling or you had to make a gut-wrenching decision? That's simply because your gut is your second brain, and that all disease begins in the gut. It is the foundation to your entire health. When it's balanced, your body thrives. But when it's out of balance, everything from fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, and chronic illness begins. Simply go to MauriceMcDonald.net, MauriceMcDonald.net, and learn all about P84, an all-natural, organically grown supplement designed to help your body with probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics to help you thrive. Remember, a healthy life starts with a healthy gut. Go to MauriceMcDonald.net, MauriceMcDonald, and learn all about P84 and get it in your system today. We're back here, guys. WDRB Media, the voice of the community. It's the It's About You radio show with your host, Maurice McDonald. It has been a pleasure for me to have my amazing guest, Miss Byrd, who, as I said earlier, was a licensed social worker, also works in this field for many, many years, and she has her own practice helping people. This topic we've talked about today about grief around the holidays. Grief around the holidays. It is so real. It is something we cannot ignore, something we cannot assume everybody's okay. My charge for you today, before I leave the show this morning, I want you all to make it a point to reach out to someone, because Christmas is 2 days away. And so therefore, I want you to make that phone call today. Someone you haven't spoken to in a while, someone that maybe lives alone, or somebody who has been through some difficult trials and tribulations they've been through. Reach out to them. A phone call. You'd be surprised how far a phone call would go. As we said earlier, grief isn't always about death. It isn't always about you losing someone. It could be that job we talked about, someone who recently got laid off, somebody who's been through some things, and they may need to hear your voice today. A phone call, an email, a text message. Stop by their house, check on them. Let them know that you really care about them, because we talked about the possibility of people taking their lives. With that said, I want to go ahead and put the suicide and crisis lifeline out for the United States, guys. You can dial or text 988. Dial it or text it 988. This is a 24/7, completely free and confidential hotline. You can call and talk to someone, or let someone who needs that. Think about our veterans. If you're a veteran, you're going to dial 988, then press 1. Someone who's a veteran who needs this information, who can also help. For Spanish speakers, hey, listen, it goes the same way. Dial 988, then press 2. You can find that same hotline. All types of individuals need help during this time. For youth, there's a national hotline, Boys Town, 1-800-448-3000. That's a 24-hour. And this is for children and teens and parents. Oh my gosh. You think about the number of parents who've lost children this year or last year, adult children, because one of the worst things people go through, no doubt, is the death of their child, the death of their loved one. And holidays, it is a joyous time. People are celebrating. They're celebrating, the birth of Christ. And also you will have people who this time of year are having Hanukkah, and then you have people having Kwanzaa. This time of year is celebration, but I encourage you to reach out to somebody. Let them know you really care. Let them know that you're in it with them, because oftentimes people feel stranded. They feel left out. People will sometimes overeat during this time because of stress and because of what they've been going through and what they have been feeling. People who are grieving, because, millions of children and adults are likely to experience grief during this time. We've been sharing this information with Miss Byrd. Talked about that. She did a great job. And there are sometimes people will need others to advocate for them, to help them, to reach out and let them know, make the phone call with them and for them. Because we talked about grief being a deeply personal and cultural, it is culturally shaped. Two people may lose similar loved ones, but under the same circumstances, but experiences of grief is very different. It is totally different. The duration, the intensity doesn't matter. It goes longer for some people, and we're not to judge them, and stay in the moment with them and let them know that you truly, truly care as they go through this time. The loss of life, the loss of loved ones, the loss of jobs. It is important that we understand and be in the moment to help them while they struggle through their bereavement, because they go back and they'll rekindle that. So don't just think about the tree and the presents, the food. Someone may not show up at the dinner. Check on them, the Christmas dinner, whatever it is. Reach out and let them talk. And when you do talk, sometimes be silent. Oh yeah, you heard what I said. Talk, but be silent. Be in the moment. My therapist once said to me, when grief is new, words are few. So make sure that you do not overtalk. Be there as a sounding board to listen and be in the moment with them, guys. Be in the moment with them as we talk about this topic of grief, holiday time, celebration, and all of those things that we hold so dear to us. Listen, I wish you guys a very, very Merry Christmas, and be ready to be in a moment with someone and celebrate time with your family, create new memories, new joys, new laughter. All of that's going to be a fantastic time you're going to have with your family. So with that said, we're going to see you next week. Make sure you go to my YouTube channel. It's About You. And make sure you can follow me there. Go to MauriceMcDonald.net, MauriceMcDonald.net. And you can see how you can email me, get in touch with me, learn all about that gut health. And that is truly, truly important. So with that said, we'll see you all next week, because we're going to be in the building.